subscribers. Ayapo Yapa for sending this story from people.com, July 27th, 2018. When I first saw this story, I had to walk away. And come back and do the story. Woman dies days after giving birth as medics assume she can't afford ambulance ride. Mom claims. First of all, it is not the job of any paramedics to show up at your house on an emergency call and then squabble around about what you can't afford. At that moment, that is irrelevant. And anybody that comes here and try to say they did the right thing, I am going to block and erase everything that you wrote. When somebody is in need of an emergency, that should be priority. That should be number one in that moment. It is not the job of paramedics to stand around talking about what can and can't be afforded. And I sure hope her family sue the hell out of them. And of course, this was Florida. Is there any good news that ever comes out of that state? I don't mean no harm, but is there any good news that ever comes out of Florida? A mother of three from Florida died days after experiencing a stroke. And the 4 paramedics who arrived on the scene have now been suspended after an investigation revealed they mishandled the response. People confirms. In the early morning hours on July 4th, Nicole Black found her daughter, 30 years old Crystal Galloway, unresponsive in a bathtub just 6 days after she had given birth to a son via cesarean. You know what it is, too. A lot of times, because because of the insurance, y'all, they rush people out of these hospitals when they're really not ready to leave at all. And in my opinion, no insurance company should be determining whether or not you can stay in a hospital. That should be up to the medical staff that's there and caring for you. But this is the ratchet system that is being ran in America. And we're told that we can't live without this shit. Moving on. When Galloway regained consciousness a short time later and complained about her head, Black quickly called emergency services and explained that her daughter was breathing but was drooling from the mouth, she told Tampa Bay Times. But when Hillsborough County fire rescue officials arrived, Black claims that instead of providing immediate treatment, they questioned whether the family could afford the ambulance ride to the hospital. That is not the job of the paramedics. That is not the job of the paramedics at all. So they were completely out of line for even questioning that at a moment when an emergency situation was going on with someone. You know, I am grateful to see one thing. More and more people are rejecting the system that is in place, and it should be rejected. My daughter begged for her life, she said. The only thing they were worried about was my daughter had a new baby and she couldn't afford an ambulance. That is not the paramedic's job to stand there and determine what can be afforded. That's not their job. The medics then carried Galloway down 3 flights of stairs and continued to spend precious time talking about the cost of the ambulance. Oh my God. So this woman was suffering and needed emergency care, and they are still whining and carrying on about the cost of the ambulance. Why? Do they own the ambulance? Is this their personal business that they own? I bet you it wasn't. So Black told ABC Action News she decided to transport her daughter herself. Oh my God. Well, I hope her mother sues this emergency EMS service. They need to be sued. The whole conversation as the EMS drivers put my child in my car was that it was best for us because we couldn't afford an ambulance. She told the news station. My daughter begged for her life. She begged. This is the most disgusting thing that I have ever read in my life. In total, the ride to Brandon Regional Hospital, just 3 blocks away, would have amounted to $600. So what? So what? So what? So you're saying her life was not worth $600. That's what they're really saying. Your life ain't worth the $600 ride to the hospital. And the fact that the ride for 3 blocks is $600 just go to show you how corrupt America really is. This system needs to fall. I'm all in favor for it falling. Once at the hospital, scans revealed Galloway's brain was bleeding. She was then airlifted to Tampa General Hospital. She fell into a coma and passed away on July 9th, just days before her 31st birthday. But the paramedics are disputing Black's account, according to the Times, saying she voluntarily offered to take her daughter to the hospital and only requested their help to move her downstairs after she spoke with 2 sheriff deputies who first arrived on the scene. And you see how none of them helped her? All those people around. You had the 2 sheriff deputies, you had the EMTs, you had all those people around, and not one of them had enough moral fiber to do the right thing and get this woman to the hospital immediately. So it doesn't matter how many of them show up on the scene. What a waste. In a statement sent to People by the Hillsborough County Fire Rescue Lieutenant John Mike Morris said the medics would have transported Galloway had her condition seemed critical when they arrived. Well, let the hospital determine that. Get her there anyway, and let the hospital determine what her condition is. Something was obviously wrong if she passed out and was unresponsive in a tub, and then she woke up and she was drooling. Something obviously was wrong. So they're going to squabble about a bill and at one glimpse determine she didn't really need help? Are you freaking kidding me? If the daughter presented that she was critical, Lieutenant explained, I'm certain our crew would have highly advised that the daughter be transported. How can she determine that? She probably didn't even know what was wrong with herself. So you expect a woman or anybody that you arrive on the scene and they should sit there and diagnose themselves? Is that what you're saying? You know, they don't want to admit they did something wrong. This is why this lieutenant is sounding like a goddamn fool right now. So the daughter, who was passed out in the tub, woke up, started drooling, said she had a bad headache. She is the one that's supposed to sit there and diagnose herself before they transport her to a hospital. Does that make any kind of goddamn common sense? But see, this is the kind of stuff that is said because they take us for fools and they think that this is good enough to tell us. It's not good enough to tell anyone. That's not even good enough to sit around and say to a dog that's in critical condition. An investigation into the conduct of the medics was launched days after the incident, and Hillsborough County Administrator Mike Merrill told reporters during a press conference on Monday that while the medics did a lot of things wrong, they found no evidence that the medics engaged in any conversation about the ambulance costs with Black. So what they're saying is he chooses not to believe this mother that was physically there and saw this whole thing unfold. That's what he's trying to dismiss it. There were discussions between the mother and the deputies concerning costs. Well, the deputy's job is not to discuss the cost of anything when they arrive. That's not the job of the EMT. That's not the job of the deputy. So even if you're trying to push this whole thing on the deputies, you're still wrong. There were discussions between the mother and the deputies concerning costs, primarily driven by questions from the mother, which may have led to her concussion or a conclusion. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm just incensed reading this. Or statements that she wanted to transport her daughter, Merrill said. Well, I think based on you squabbling over the cost of everything, that's probably why she decided I need to take my daughter myself. My guys did a lot of things wrong here, and we take responsibility. From the record I have, that's not one of the things they did wrong. You know, at this point, y'all, the deputies need to be fired, and these EMTs, they all need to be fired. But, you know, in this climate, all they got to do is go across county lines and they'll be rehired as if nothing has happened. But the county's investigation into the matter found that Morris and three other medics were in gross neglect of duty after they failed to properly check Galloway's vital signs. So they literally showed up on the scene and didn't want to do nothing. So they complained about the costs. They didn't check her vitals, and they expected her to diagnose themselves to tell them that it was an emergency. Does this all make any sense? I never heard nothing so stupid before in my life. But am I surprised this happened in the state of George Zimmerman? No, I'm not. You know, all of the news from Florida in the past and even recently is just treacherous. It is just treacherous. The inquiry also found that the medics failed to have either the woman sign an informed consent document that showed they declined transportation. Not only that, they submitted paperwork claiming they could not find Galloway when responding to the call. So they are denying that they even saw her when they went out there. Yeah, they did everything wrong. The fact that they didn't check her vitals, they didn't have her sign a form, they expected her to diagnose herself. It sounds like when they got there, they literally were a bunch of lazy asses that didn't want to do nothing. This sound like the laziest paramedic crew in America. I feel sorry that she got stuck with all of these people, the deputies and the EMTs that weren't worth shit. In a statement to People, the department confirmed that the responding medics, Lieutenant Morris, 36, fire medic Justin Sweeney, 36, fire medic Andrew J. Martin, 28, and acting lieutenant Courtney Barton, 38, all have been suspended with pay. Well, that's a vacation. They don't deserve any pay for what they did. They literally went out there and didn't do their job. Based on the facts and statements obtained during the review of this incident by Human Resources, the information indicates that the 4 fire rescue personnel did not perform their duties. The statement reads, the review indicates several Hillsborough County fire rescue standard operating procedures were violated during this incident. The employment status of the medics will be determined in a disciplinary hearing on Tuesday, July 31st, Merrill adds. According to the Times, the Hillsborough Sheriff's Office cleared the 2 sheriffs who initially arrived on the scene of any violation of policy. They should all be fired. It was too many people there not to do the right thing. Too many people. Black recently set up a GoFundMe page to raise funds to help her provide for her 2 granddaughters, ages 13, 7, and her newborn grandson. Let me see what this. Okay. I will leave the link to the GoFundMe for this family. These children don't have their mother over the stupidity of deputies and EMTs that were too fucking lazy to do their jobs and worried about what could be afforded and at a time of an emergency. What they did was disgusting and unforgivable. Her daughter was 30 years old and just graduated from college. She had her whole life ahead of her. Black told ABC Action News of her daughter, "You can tell me you're sorry. You can give me your condolences, but you still have to work this out with God." There's nothing to work out. They are responsible for her death. All right. And it seems like what happened was, being that she had hemorrhaging on the brain, it is not unusual for a woman to give birth and then have a stroke. It does happen. And strokes will leave a hemorrhage on the brain, bleeding on the brain. And that I do know because my mother had a stroke. She needed somebody to just help her. That's all she needed. And instead of helping when they came on the scene, they sat around squabbling about the cost. This is just more proof our lives are not worth nothing to them. They have convinced themselves that when they devalue us, they're doing the right thing. And they're not doing the right thing, ladies and gentlemen. That is the most heinous. That is just straight up animal behavior. That's not human behavior at all. That's the behavior of an animal. My prayers go out to these children that lost their mother, all over a senseless act. Senseless. Of people that failed to do their jobs. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell. And I really seriously need a break after doing this video. Peace, family.